So I recently played Monster Hunter for the first time, and a lot of people were not happy about it. I'll give you a timestamp to skip to the gameplay, but because of how negative the video was to a lot of people, I do have to address it before we begin. At 10,000 views, it was already the most disliked video on my channel. But oh, that was just the beginning, my friend. YouTube 3 weeks later was like, yeah, this is controversial enough, let's promote the living hell out of it. And as of now, the algorithm pumped in another 40,000 views into that video in the past week, and it now has more dislikes than all of the top 40 most viewed videos on the channel combined. And you know what? I'm genuinely not even that mad. The only reason I'm mad is that it's not a 69% like to dislike ratio. But I honestly can't even be that mad if a lot of people didn't enjoy a video style that I admittedly am not very good at doing. I don't do live reaction content videos, that's not really my thing. And for the record, that video was more high energy than I usually am. I'm not gonna clap back at everyone's comments, but the main thing I will clap back at is, of course, I'm going to be bad at the video game when I first start playing it. Newsflash, whenever it was that you started playing Monster Hunter, being a few years ago or in 2004, you were also bad at the video game. But there was a good portion of you that took the fact that I was bad in my first hours of gameplay and the fact that I played Dauntless and said I could never possibly be good at Monster Hunter. And I'm gonna give these extreme elitists a newsflash, but PvE games are not hard to get good at. If you're looking for perfection in a PvE game, being through never taking damage in it or trying to beat it close to the level of human perfection like Super Mario Bros. Is, then yes, that is difficult. But becoming better than average at a PvE game isn't hard, it just takes more than 3 hours. Getting good at a PvP game is much harder because your competition is always changing with you, but I have done that. But the fact that I even purchased Monster Hunter was a pretty big deal. I pretty much never buy video games. I've maybe bought 10 in the past 5 years. So yeah, I'm gonna play it because I bought it. I'm just not going to do 28 hours of research before I even try fighting a monster. That was a legitimate comment, by the way. 28 hours of researching all of the weapons before killing something. Based on Steam achievements, a good 30 to 40% of people don't even play the game that long. So yeah, at least I'm going to give the game more playtime than that. Now on to me actually playing the game. The main gameplay complaints people had was that I either should really take the time to learn the insect glaive or just not use it at all, and that I shouldn't use the defender weapons or armor. But those extreme elitists were doubting my affinity for being able to gain skill at the video game such that they said I wouldn't be able to make it past a certain point without it. So to make a point, I restarted with a new save file and began my journey anew. This time around I gave my character a bit more of a greaser look, and Simba was still a cat. I will say that a benefit of not doing a live gameplay reaction is that I can more closely pay attention to what's going on, unlike the Jagras in the tutorial that watched us walk into the bush. Now, some of the questions I might ask are jokes, mind you, but if you have a legitimate answer to a legitimate question or comment about something, do let me know. Like the bad lip syncing. I wouldn't have thought that it was because the animations for the dialogue was set to another language. However, I had one person tell me it was animated for the Chinese dub and another person tell me it's just animated to their own language in the game, and both of these honestly make enough sense. When I was finally given my freedom after walking around town, I picked up a mix of the leather and chainmail armors, and I picked up the insect glaive. The first quest for hunting the regular Jagras was nothing much to talk about, and I almost did it without taking any damage. One of the main positives to not using the defender gear is that I actually had to learn the gear crafting and upgrading system this time around. Looking back, I'm actually rather mad at myself for using a couple of armor spheres on the Jagras gloves when the Kestodon gloves were right around the corner. Speaking of the Kestodons, this is when I first learned that some of those smaller monsters seem to have a set extract that they will give you, the females giving you the orange and the males giving you the red. After killing a few of those, we found the first great Jagras, and I didn't notice that it ate a Kestodon whole as its entrance, and that thing must have a really strong digestive system. But yeah, I already fought these things in the other video, so I'll spare you the details. After that hunt, I upgraded my armor to a bunch of bone junk and the Kestodon gloves, and I figured I would make a bone longsword to give it a try. I could see the basics of it. Landing some normal hits allowed you to use the spirit combos. I went ahead and took it on the expedition where we would be making the northeast camp in. I figured I would go ahead and bully some Kestodons with it, but they ended up bullying me instead. Perhaps I overestimated how much I figured out the weapon at that point. And I didn't want to fight the Kuluyaku with it, so I returned for my insect glaive. One thing I ended up doing in these earlier on fights was trying too hard to make sure I had all 3 extracts. In reality, you only need the red one, and I liked having the white one too, but the orange doesn't really matter, but I spent a lot of time trying to get it on some monsters. One thing I will say I don't enjoy in the game right now is how often the monsters try to run away. Sometimes you hit it like 4 times and it runs away from you. Like, they are 25 feet tall and I'm a midget compared to them. They should have a little bit more courage. That doesn't mean I'm dissing the game, I'm just pointing out something that I personally don't like. After killing the Kulu and upgrading my gear a bit, I went to fight Puke Puke, as that's how you actually pronounce it, not Pukey Pukey. It's still ugly, by the way. After Puke Puke is Barroth, and heading into the Wildspire Waste. The first time I did this hunt was actually over on Twitch while we had some server downtime on Dauntless. Barroth seems to be the first monster where you really have to make sure that your weapon is full sharpness against. And even if it was, if you hit its head with the glaive, it seemed to always deflect the blow. Now, to one guy's credit, Barroth was the first monster I fainted against, but he said I wouldn't make it past it without the defender gear, and while it did take a bit longer than the other monsters to this point, I was able to take it down with only the 1 feint. One of the reasons I fainted being that I hadn't crafted the best armors that I could have just yet. As a part of this, I assume, I decided to fight another Puke Puke. I thought it was kind of funny that this one I ended up killing with my Kinsect while trying to get the red extract back. The next baddie up was the Gyrototus, and this was the last thing that I fought on the previous character using the defender stuff. For some reason, I think the combat actually went faster this time without the defender gear, and my weapon wasn't even more powerful than the base defender thing just yet. It just seemed to go smoother, and I had already been told about the power of extracts when hunting the Gyrototus the first time, so I don't know what gives. After this, I went on a quick expedition in the Wildspire Waste where I just ended up fighting another Barroth. This one only took about half the time to take down as the one before it, and I didn't faint this time. The next monster after this was the Tobikadachi, and I absolutely hated fighting this thing in the nest area, because there's no room to move whatsoever. It ended up knocking me out of the nest area and following me down below, which I ended up being happy that I got hit out of the nest for. I'm not sure, but I think I had some bad resistance armor against this thing because holy crap did it deal a lot of damage. But I forgive it because it looks pretty dang cool. Once it started some beef with a great Jagras, I was really able to lay into it and had it fearing for its life. Once I got it back to the nest area, it was literally 1 hit. That's another thing about the whole they run away from you thing that I don't enjoy. You chase it down for a minute at the end, sharpen your weapon up, and then once you get there, you kill it just by looking in its direction. Like, thanks man, it's just like I wasted all of that time. I decided that I would fight another one, and pretty much the same thing happened with that one too, except the second one actually hit me pretty hard when I got there, so I healed up, stunned it with my next attack, and then the attack after that killed it. Annoyed was I. After the second one, I was able to make the Tobikadachi glaive, and I felt I was ready to fight the Anjanath, which, by the way, I decided to look up some mods for the game. There was a very dirty one involving Anjanath. Just why? I wouldn't have guessed at first glance that Anjanath would have been a fire monster, but I guess it made sense because I hadn't seen one just yet. If I recall correctly, I was wearing a lot of negative fire resist armor, so when I found that out, I was kind of sweating bricks. But I did eat a very healthy meal from the canteen before jumping into this. Toward the end of the fight, I ended up trying to get too cute and use the clutch claw, and I ended up paying the price for it. The Anjanath then stunned me with a fire breath and charged in to get the KO. And very similar to chasing down the Tobikadachis, I killed the Anjanath pretty much as soon as I got back to it. I gathered my extracts and the next attack that I did killed it. I was mortified with myself that I didn't kill the thing without the feint because it was that close. I then decided to do a quick investigation before jumping into the assignment where we take on Zora Magdaros for the first time. It took me a minute to realize that I had to load the ammo into the cannons and ballista myself, and that Simba would only help me if I was also doing it. The mounting phase of the hunt was a bit interesting, and I thought it was odd that you got all 3 extracts from the same thing on the monster. One thing that I keep forgetting exists in this game is the minimap, and I took several minutes in between each core to find the next one, and even just ended up attacking its head. I didn't completely waste my time though, because I was finding a lot of the mining outcrops on it, but I probably could have saved about 10 minutes on this mission if I just used the map. After this mission, you go on an expedition of the Great Reveal ravine, which leads you into the Coral Highlands, but a rather rude monster knocks you into the Rotten Vale. Then you actually do an expedition of the Coral Highlands, and might I say, the open areas of this place are pretty darn beautiful. I spent about an hour wandering around out here, killing a few shamos and such. I just wanted to wander around some more, but a beautiful Legiana got in my way. It really did not want me to do anything, so I spent a bit of time poking back at it and ducked into the campsite area, which got me away from it for a little while, but I did run into it again later. I continued running around pretty aimlessly and found a Paolumu before I returned to base. Because of how long I ran around here for, I was able to craft the Event Harvest armor, which is pretty easily the best looking armor that I've seen so far, which is pretty expected given that it's an event item. I started playing around a bit more with the investigations feature at this point, which gives you a ton of side quests that you can do. I got one that was hunting a Tobikadachi and an Anjanath, which the Tobikadachi was really easy for some reason. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you're supposed to use the same element that the monster is when fighting it, but somehow I killed the Tobikadachi in 3.5 minutes. The Anjanath was more like I would have expected, taking about 8 minutes, but are the investigation hunt monsters like easier than when you first meet them in the story or something? Because it definitely felt like that with the Tobikadachi. After this, I went on the hunt for the Paolumu. 3 words. Paolumu is annoying. Not because I found it particularly hard, but because it seems like every time it breathes, you get staggered. Like, I'm fine being knocked on my ass and not being able to do anything, but just standing around for a few seconds because the monster decided to breathe again, I found really annoying. I didn't really take all that much damage throughout the fight, but about half of it was just cowering in fear while this rat balloon wyvern thing breathed. After that, it was time to expedition in the Rotten Vale, and the Radobaan honestly seemed like it was going to be the worst experience of the game for me thus far, just because of how armored it is. It honestly wasn't all that bad though, considering half of the attacks that I did just got deflected even at full sharpness. Maybe this experience was just a bit lucky, but who knows. After killing it, I had a less than pleasant encounter with some Gyros, met a crazy old lady, and returned home. I went on another investigation, fighting a Tobikadachi and a Great Jagras, taking out the Tobikadachi in only a few minutes and the Great Jagras in less than 2 minutes, so they have to be at least a little bit easier, right? So I did that, and for whatever reason, I decided to do an expedition in the Wildspire Waste. I don't really know why or what happened after I stopped recording, but it happened, and that's where I have stopped playing for now. This is more of the style of video that I make a lot of, not live reactions, and trust me, my live reactions to some of the things that happen in Dauntless aren't too positive either. If the experience from the verse video has taught me anything, it's that if I'm playing a game for the first time, I should probably do the post-gameplay analysis type videos that I'm accustomed to rather than doing a live reaction type content. Thank you for those of you who made it to the end of this video, especially those of you who may have also watched the first video of Monster Hunter and decided to come back. Like if you enjoyed, dislike if you didn't, because it's pretty clear that that helps with the algorithm too. If you've got further tips or miscellaneous comments, I would love to hear them, and if you just want to tell me I'm still trash, that's cool too. Maybe we can develop a real hate-hate relationship with one another. I am a Dauntless main, but I will be playing more Monster Hunter from time to time, and if you want to see some more of the progression, consider subscribing. I've been Trevor, I go by TheMrTrails, and I will catch you guys next time.